Welcome back to the Cosmic Consciousness series. If you know, you know, and if you truly know, drop a like and subscribe at the bottom to Me, Myself, and I channel. Welcome to the Unity, baby. Today we're going to be continuing Francis Bacon, or Shakespeare, or whatever he was. This one's going to be fun because now we get to talk about his sonnets. All right, here we go. Part 9. The first 17 sonnets urged the cosmic sense to produce. The theory is that they were written as they stand earliest and that they were the first writings of their author after illumination. If it be thought singular that a man should so write, then compare this with an undoubted case of precisely the same thing as is here supposed. The 1855 edition of Leaves of Grass was written by Whitman immediately after his illumination. On the third page of the Leaves, the preface was written afterwards. Stand these words, addressed to the cosmic sense. Loose the stop from your throat, not words, not music or rhyme I want, not custom or lecture, not even the best, only the lull I like, the hum of your valved voice. In the case of Whitman, as in the case of Buddha and Jesus, the special urge of the cosmic sense was towards an exalted life. In the case of Bacon, as in that of Balzac, it was especially towards literary expression. In accordance with this distinction, Whitman writes in A Long Life 2 small volumes, Bacon in a shorter life 10 or 20 times as much. Whitman's invocation occupies 3 lines, Bacon's 200 lines. Sonnet 1. From fairest creatures we desire increase, that thereby beauty's rose might never die, but as the riper should by time decease, his tender air might bear his memory. But thou, contracted to thine own bright eyes, feedest thy light's flame with self-substantial fuel, making a famine where abundance lies, thyself thy foe, to thy sweet self too cruel. Thou that art now the world's fresh ornament, and only herald to the gaudy spring, within thine own hand, thine own bud, bearest thy content, and tender churl makest waste in niggarding. Pity the world, or else this glutton be, to eat the world's due by the grave and thee. Translate, please translate. I know you're begging me. Only, i.e., incomparable herald of the gaudy spring. In 43 cases of cosmic consciousness, the time of year of first illumination is known with more or less certainty. In 20 and in 15 of these, it took place in the first half of the year, that is, January through June. Did perhaps Bacon's illumination take place in the spring? And is that the meaning of the line? The fairest of all things is what Plotinus calls the sublime condition, and of which Dante also said, O splendor of living light eternal, who hath become so pallid under the shadow of Parnassus, or hath so drunk at his cistern, that he would not seem to have his mind encumbered, trying to represent thee as thou didst appear there, where in harmony the heaven overshadows thee, when in the open air thou didst thyself disclose. So that's how it compares to those guys. Sonnet 2. When 40 winters shall besiege thy brow, and dig deep trenches in thy beauty's field, thy youth's proud livery, so gazed on now, will be a tattered weed of small worth held, then being asked where all thy beauty lies, where all the treasure of thy lusty days, to say, within thine own deep sunken eyes, were in all eating shame and thriftless praise. How much more praise deserveth thy beauty's use, if thou couldst answer at all, this fair child of mine shall sum my count and make my old excuse, proving his beauty by succession thine. This were to be new made when thou art old, and see thy blood warm when thou feelst it cold. Okay, so translation, when the cosmic sense would be 40 years old, Bacon would be 70. Sonnet 3. Look in thy glass and tell the face thou viewest, now is the time that face should form another face, whose fresh repair, if thou renewest, thou dost beguile the whole world, unbless some mother. For where is she so fair whose unearthed womb disdains the tillage of thy husbandry? Or who is he so fond will the tomb of his self-love to stop posterity? Thou art thy mother's glass, and she in thee calls back the lovely April of her prime. So thou through windows of thine age shalt see, despite of wrinkles, this thy golden time. But if thou live, remembered not to be, die single, and thine image dies with thee. Translation, unbless some mother, deprived for some art of the offspring it might should have had from the generative influence of the lovely boy that is the cosmic sense. Where is she so fair? What art is there so fair, etc., right? Thy art thy mother's glass, that is nature's mirror, right? Hold the mirror up to nature, or Hamlet. In the cosmic sense, all nature, including the human heart, is reflected. In this connection, consider, besides the Shakespeare plays, the Comédie Humaine of Balzac, the Divine Comedy of Dante, or the Leaves of Grass of Whitman. Sonnet 15. When I consider everything that grows, holds in perfection but a little moment, that this huge stage presenteth not but shows, whereon the stars and secret influence commit. When I perceive that men as plants increase, cheered and checked even by the selfsame sky, vaunt in their youthful sap at height decrease, and wear their brave state out of memory. Then the conceit of this inconstant stay sets you most rich in youth before my sight, where wasteful time debateth with decay, to change your day of youth to sullied night. And all in war with time for love of you, as he takes from you, I engraft you new. Okay, translate. All things after a momentary period of maturity fade and lapse. The cosmic sense itself is subject to the same universal law. In order that it may not die absolutely with the death of its possessor, he, the self-conscious Bacon, engrafts it anew in the sonnets. Okay, Sonnet 16. But wherefore not you a mightier way make war upon this bloody tyrant, time, that is, and fortify yourself in your own decay with means more blessed than my barren rhyme. Now stand you on the top of happy hours, and many maidens' gardens yet unset, with virtuous wish would bear your living flowers, much liker than your painted counterfeit. So should the lines of life that repair, with which this time's pencil or my pupil pen, neither in inward worth or outward fare, can make you live yourself in eyes of men. To give away yourself keeps yourself still, and you must live drawn by your own sweet skill. He, the self-conscious Bacon, will, he says, engraft the cosmic sense in the sonnet. But he says to the cosmic sense, why not you yourself adopt a mightier way to ensure your earthly immortality? You are now in your young prime, and many maiden gardens, that is art, poetry, the drama, etc., would be glad to bear your children, your living flowers, and these would be much more like you than would a description of you made from without, as in the case of the sonnets. For the sonnets are a description of the cosmic sense from the point of view of self-consciousness, whereas the really desirable thing was that the cosmic sense should itself speak. Only the lull I like, says Whitman, the hum of your valved voice. If you would put yourself out, Bacon says, to the cosmic sense, you would make yourself immortal. You would keep yourself still. Sonnet 17. Who will believe my verse in time to come, if it were filled with your most high deserts? Though yet, heaven knows, it is but as a tomb which hides your life and shows not half your parts. If I could write the beauty of your eyes, and in fresh numbers number all your graces, the age to come would say, this poet lies. Such heavenly touch never touched earthly faces. So should my papers, yellowed with their age, be scorned like old men of less truth than tongue, and your truth rights be termed a poet's rage, and stretched meter of an antique song. But were some child of yours alive that time, you should live twice in it and in my rhyme. Okay, so let me say what I may, as in the sonnets, about you. No one could realize from my words what you really are. Let me tell how you appear to me, and it will be said I have exaggerated or lied. But produce or leave behind your children like you yourself, worthy of yourself as they must be, then you cannot be denied. You will live unmistakably twice, one in your own offspring, whose divinity none will be able to question, and two in my description of you in the sonnets, which description will be seen from a comparison with your own offspring to be truthful. Sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often in his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. The first part of the sonnet is a eulogy of the cosmic sense. It would seem that at the time the sonnet was composed, Bacon had settled in his own mind how the cosmic sense was to express itself, and some of the work seems to have been done, that is, some of the plays written. He speaks of the cosmic sense as having grown to time in eternal lines. Okay, Sonnet 33. Full many a glorious morning have I seen, flatter the mountaintops with sovereign eye, kissing with golden face the meadows green, gilding pale streams with heavenly alchemy, anon permit the basest clouds to rise, with ugly rack on his celestial face, and from the forlorn world his visage hide, stealing unseen to west with this disgrace. Even so my sun one early morn did shine with all triumphant splendor on my brow, but out, alack, he was but 1 hour mine. The region cloud hath masked him from me now. Yet him for this my love has no with disdaineth. Sons of the world may stain when heaven's sunneth staineth. Sonnet 33 refers to the intermittent character of illumination, which holds true in all cases of cosmic consciousness, in which there is more than one flash of the divine radiance. It treats of the cheerlessness and barrenness of this interval as compared with those periods when the cosmic sense is actually present. So Bacon, referring to the intermittent character of his illumination, says, "The sun shone on me a good while, but not constantly, for the sun hid itself, and then I knew not nor well understood my own labor," in his own writings. Note the use of the same figure by both writers. So also Yeats tells us when these visions occur, it is as if the door was opened into a most marvelous light, whereby the soul sees as men do when lightning flashes into a dark night. The lightning makes surrounding objects visible for an instant and then leaves them in darkness, though the forms of them remain in the fancy. But in the case of the soul, the vision is much more perfect. For those things it saw in spirit in that light are so impressed upon it, but whenever God enlightens it again, it beholds them as distinctly as it did the first, precisely as in a mirror in which we see objects reflected whenever we look upon them. These visions, once granted to the soul, never afterward leave it altogether, for the forms remain, though they become somewhat indistinct in the course of time. The effects of these visions in the soul are quietness, enlightenment, joy-like glory, sweetness, pureness, love, humility, inclination, or elevation of the mind to God, sometimes more, sometimes less, sometimes more of one, sometimes more of another, according to the disposition of the soul and the will of God. With the last words of Yeats, compare Paul, the fruit of the Spirit, or whatever you call it, Christ, or the cosmic sense, or what we call it, the cosmic sense, is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, meekness, and temperance. Sonnet 36. Let me confess that we two must be twain, although our undivided loves are one. So shall those blots that do with me remain, without thy help by me be borne alone. In our two loves there is but one respect, though in our lives a separate spite, which though it alter not love's sole effect, yet doth it steal sweet hours from love's delight. I may not evermore acknowledge thee, let me bewailed guilt should do thee shame, nor thou with public kindness honor me, unless thou take that honor from my name. But do not do so, I love thee in such sort, as thou being mine, mine is thy good report. It is reasonable to suppose that this sonnet represents a later date than those above quoted. It is fair to imagine, therefore, that when it was written quite a body of the plays was in existence. For some years Bacon had been leading a dual life. On the one hand, the life of a lawyer, courtier, politician, his self-conscious life. On the other, the life of a seer, poet, the life lit by the light rare, untellable lighting, the very light, the light that never was on land or sea, the life, in a word, of cosmic consciousness. He had kept these two lives entirely apart. None or few, Anthony perhaps and Matthews, knew that he was living any other life than the first. They had for many strong reasons and feelings stronger than reasons become with him a settled policy that the two lives were to be kept apart. The frank duality of this one and some of the other sonnets will be almost or quite incomprehensible to many as implied to two parts of the same person or two personalities in the same individual. But we know that supposing the interpretation here adopted to be correct, the language of the sonnets is not more extreme in this respect than is language in other cases, which can be no doubt as to its meaning. Thus Whitman writes, "With laugh and many a kiss, O soul, thou pleasest me, I to thee, I thee most certainly. And again I turning call to thee, O soul, thou actual me." The writer of the sonnet says or seems to say that should he acknowledge his other self, the cosmic sense, and its offspring, the plays, any good that could do him, the self-conscious person, if you will, would be taken from this higher self and that he will not consent to. Sonnet 39. O how thy worth with manners may I sing, when thou art all the better part of me. What can mine own praise to mine own self bring? And what is it but mine own when I praise thee? And even for this let divided live, and our dear love lose name of single one, that by this separation I may give that due to thee which thou deservest alone. And O absence, that what a torment would thou prove, were it not thy sour leisure gave sweet leave to entertain the time with thou thoughts of love, which time and thought so sweetly doth receive, and that thou teachest how to make one twain by praising him here who doth hence remain. The meaning of this sonnet seems unmistakable. It scarcely needs a commentary. The author says that the cosmic sense is the best part of him, as of course it was, and being part of himself, only himself, it is scarcely mannerly in himself praise to his own self. But he says, for this very reason, let us live as two, and if you want to. His absence from the cosmic sense is, of course, the time he is occupied with law, politics, business, worldly affairs, all that time, in fact, between the periods of his own personal illumination, when his time and mind were not occupied with the things of your cosmic sense. That absence is made happy by the knowledge that at any time he can turn to thoughts of the cosmic sense and of the things belonging to it. The most striking expression in this sonnet is, thou, the cosmic sense, teachest how to make one twain. This is, as pointed out many times in the volume, a prime characteristic of the cases in question. The attainment of eretitship, cosmic consciousness, says Gautama, will cause a man being one to become multiform. I live, says Paul, yet no longer but I, but the Christ, the cosmic sense, lives in me. And again, if any man be in Christ or cosmic sense, if any man live the life of the cosmic sense, he is a new creature. And Paul says that the man Jesus made both, that is the cosmic sense, Christ, and the two, the self-conscious man, Jesus, one, that he might create of the twain one new man. And as many other places he bears testimony to his own dual personality. Mohammed called the cosmic sense Gabriel. The Quran was dictated by him or it. The ostensible Mohammed was a second individuality. Balzac too, he was speaking of Louis Lambert. I himself, after giving his life down to the period of illumination, says, the events I still relate from the second existence of this creature destined to be exceptional in all things. He then goes on to describe the oncoming of the cosmic conscious condition and in aphorisms, cosmic consciousness itself. Whitman constantly refers to the cosmic sense as his soul and calls the everyday visible Walt Whitman the other I am, and so on. Sonnet 42. So am I as the rich whose blessed key can bring him to his sweet locked up treasure, the which he will not every hour survey, to his sweet locked up treasure, the which he will not every hour survey, for blunting the fine point of seldom pleasure. Therefore are feasts so solemn and so rare, since seldom coming in the long years set, like stones of worth they thinly placed are, or captain jewels in the carcanet. So is the time that keeps you as my chest, or as the wardrobe which the robe doth hide, to make some special instant special blessed, by new unfolding his imprisoned pride. Blessed are you whose worthiness gives scope, being had to triumph, being lacked to hope. Compare Plotinus. This sublime condition is not of permanent duration. It is only now and then that we can enjoy the elevation mercifully made for possible use, above the limits of the body and the world. I myself have realized it but 3 times as yet. Bacon's periods of illumination were probably longer and more frequent than those of Plotinus. Neither Plotinus nor Bacon apparently could control the periods of illumination. It seems likely that Jesus refers to this apparently causeless and arbitrary coming and going of the divine light when he said, the wind bloweth where it listeth, and thou hearest the voice thereof, but knowest not whence it cometh or whither it goeth. So is everyone that is born of the Spirit. Or whatever. 43, Sonnet 43. What is your substance, whereof are you made, that millions of strange shadows on you tend? Since every one hath, every one shade, and you but one can every shadow lend. Describe Adonis, and the counterfeit is poorly imitated after you. On Helen's cheek all art of beauty set, and you in Grecian tires are painted new. Speak of the spring, and foison of the year if you want. The one doth shadow of your beauty show, the other as your bounty doth appear. And you in every blessed shape, we know, or abominable shape rather, in all external grace you have some part, but you like none you for constant part. Like none of you have a constant part. A description from one point of view of cosmic consciousness. Okay, compare with it a description by Gautama from the same point of view. He says, Arahatship, cosmic consciousness, enables a man to comprehend his own heart, the hearts of other beings, and of other men, to understand all minds, the passionate, the calm. Well, a lot of people don't have that quality, as you know what I'm talking about. The angry, the peaceable, the deluded, the wise, the concentrated, the ever-varying, the lofty, the narrow, the sublime, the mean, the steadfast, the wavering, the free, and the enslaved. That is, it reveals all characters, as is so well exemplified in the Shakespeare drama. Compare Dante's worldwide vision, Balzac's insight into the structure and operation of the infinite human heart, Whitman's I am of old and of young, of the foolish as much as the wise, regardless of others. Ever regardful of others, maternal as well as paternal, a child as well as a man, etc., like everything, all things. And the almost universal knowledge of man and his environment, which his writings, especially the leaves, indicate. Sonnet 50. Not marble nor the gilded monuments of princes shall outlive this powerful rhyme, but you shall shine more bright in these contents than unswept stone besmeared with sluttish time. When wasteful war shall statues overturn and royals root out of the work of masonry, nor Mars his sword nor war's quick fire shall burn the living record of your memory. Gainst death and all oblivious enmity shall you pace forth, your praise shall still find room, even in the eyes of all posterity that wear this world out to the ending doom. So, till the judgment that yourself arise, you live in this and dwell in lovers' eyes. That is the eyes of people that actually have love. By this powerful rhyme, in which the cosmic sense shall endure and shine in the far future, is probably not intended the sonnets, but the plays or some particular plays such as Romeo and Juliet, if you will, written 1596, printed 1597 and 1599. Until the judgment brought to birth by the elevation of human taste by the plays themselves, you, cosmic consciousness, shall live in this play and delight the eyes and hearts of lovers. Sonnet 59. If there be nothing new, but that which is, hath been before, how are our brains beguiled, which laboring for invention bears amiss the second burden of a former child. Oh, that record could, with a backward look, even of 500 courses of the sun, show me your image in some antique book, since mind at first in character was done, that I might see what the old world could say to this composed wonder of your frame, whether we are mended, or whether better they, or whether revolution be the same. Oh, sure I am, the wits of former days to subjects worse have giving admiring praise. So the writer asks, is this illumination of which I am conscious a new phenomenon, or did it exist in the old world? I wish, he says, I could find it or a description of it in literature. If it has existed, it ought to be found in the records of the human mind, and if I could find such records, I could judge whether the human mind was advancing, retreating, or standing still. He seems to reach the conclusion that few or none of the great writers of the past experienced it. Bacon was exceedingly familiar with the Bible and therefore with the Gospels and the Pauline epistles, but his reverence for these writings would probably prevent his comparing his experience to that of sacred writers, people like Muhammad and others. It does not seem that he knew much of Dante, and the Buddhistic literature in which it is fully treated was an absolutely sealed book to the Englishmen of his time. It would never have occurred to him to examine the Quran and the life of Muhammad, if indeed, I already stated that, you already heard me, they were accessible to him. Bacon was thus probably entirely cut off from any knowledge of other cases than his own. Okay, sonnet, I guess 72. Sin of self-love possesseth all mine eye. And all my soul, and all my every part, and for this sin there is no remedy, it is so grounded inward in my own heart. Go figure, huh? Methinks no face so gracious is as mine, no shape so true, no truth of such account, and for myself in my own worth so define, as I all other and all worth surmount. He can't even find the words to talk about other people. But when my glass shows me myself indeed, beat and chopped with tanned antiquity, mine own self-love quite contrary I read. Self so self-loving were iniquity. 'Tis thee that for myself I praise, painting my age with beauty of, I guess, my own day. In this sonnet, the duality of the person writing is brought out very strongly, no doubt purposely. When he dwells on his cosmic conscious self, he is, as it were, lost in admiration of himself. And when he turns to the physical and self-conscious self, he is inclined, on the contrary, to despise himself. Well, that's good. He is at the same time very much and very little of an egotist, Those who knew the man Walt Whitman know that the same seeming contradiction resting on the same foundation existed most markedly in him. I can tell you why. It's because other people don't like that, hearing that. That makes him feel bad because other people are like, you're selfish. It's just because he's pitying his own self. That's the only reason. Whitman's admiration for the cosmic conscious Whitman and his works, The Leaves, was just such a pictured in the sonnet, while he was absolutely devoid of egotism in the ordinary way of self-conscious individuals. It is believed that the above remarks would remain true if applied to Paul, Mohammed, or Balzac. Reduced to last analysis, the matter seems to stand about as follows. The cosmic conscious self, from all points of view, appears superb, divine. From the point of view of the cosmic conscious self, the body and the self-conscious self appear equally divine. But from the point of view of the ordinary self-consciousness, and so compared with the cosmic conscious self, the self-conscious self and the body seem insignificant and even, as well shown in Paul's case, contemptible. Is that Sonnet 80? Something. That thou art blamed shall not be thy defect, for slander's mark was ever yet the fair. The ornament of beauty is suspect, a crow that flies in heaven's sweetest air. So thou be good, slander doth but approve thy worth the greater, who, being wooed of time, for canker vice the sweetest buzz doth love, and thou presentest pure unstained prime. Thou hast passed by the ambush of young days, either not assailed or victor being charged, yet this thy praise cannot be so thy praise, to tie up envy evermore enlarged. If some suspect of ill mask not thy show, then thou alone kingdoms of hearts shouldst owe. Bacon says that a cosmic sense, as seen in its offspring, the plays, should be blamed. As for license in language, contempt of received rules, etc., shall be no proof of defect. Great original works, such as the Shakespeare drama, is never appreciated at first, as in fact, always the object of grave suspicion and often of absolute condemnation. If he says the cosmic sense is really the divine thing it seems to be, evil speaking of it and its offspring only proves it the more divine, as showing it is over the heads and above the judgment of ordinary men. If it was not for this inevitable blindness, all eyes and hearts would recognize and bow down before its supremacy. Alright, another song. So oft have I invoked thee for my muse, and found such fair assistance in my verse, as every alien pen hath got my use, and under thee their poesy disperse. Thine eyes that have taught the dumb on high to sing, and heavy ignorance aloft to fly, have added feathers to the learned's wing, and given grace a double majesty. Yet be most proud of that which I compile, whose influence is thine, and born of thee, and others' works dost thou mend the style, and arts with thy sweet graces grace thee, but thou art all my art, and dost advance as high as learning my rude ignorance. Cool. At the time this sonnet was written, many of the plays were composed, published, and doubtless imitated. The writer speaks of himself as ignorant because he had had no training or practice in this verse writing. The cosmic sense had immediately upon its appearance taught the hitherto dumb man on high to sing. Becoming illumined at about the age of 30, he not only begun without any apprenticeship to write poetry, but to write a new and higher poetry that had hitherto been written in English. And he says that the divine light shining through his compositions or the plays has been, to some extent at all events, absorbed and utilized by the verse writers of the day, has added feathers to the wings and given a double majesty to the grace of their lines. So Lane says of Scott that he was being driven from post to pillar by his imitators, whom he had taught, like Captain Boabill, to write nearly all as well as himself. But he says to the cosmic sense, be most proud of what I produce, for the merits of that come not all from study, cleverness, or practice, but entirely from yourself. Compare with the above statement the cases of Jesus, Paul, Mohammed, Balzac, and Walt Whitman, who either had no practice or training, or, as in the case of Balzac, derived little or no benefit therefrom, but who in middle life began immediately upon illumination either to speak or to write undying words. Alright, continuing the sonnets. Was it the proud full sail of his great verse, bound for the prize of all too precious you, that did my ripe thoughts in my brain inhearse, making their tomb the womb wherein they grew? Was it his spirit by spirits taught to write above a mortal pitch that struck me dead? No, neither he nor his compeers by night giving him aid, my verse astonished. He nor that affable familiar ghost, which nightly golds him with intelligence, as victors of my sonnets cannot boast. I was not sick of any fear from thence, but when your countenance filled up his line, then lacked I matter, that enfeebled mind. In this sonnet, reduplication of the individual, that is Bacon, Shakespeare, is carried to the farthest pitch. We are forcibly reminded once more of Gautama's words in this connection, viz., that cosmic consciousness, or arahatship as he calls it, will make a man being one to become multiform. Not merely two, but multiform. Few or no sonnets, it would seem, have been written for the time to time called the other I am, but the cosmic consciousness personality had been producing rapidly. Several or many plays had been written within a brief period. The cosmic conscious Bacon had been taught the cosmic sense to write above a mortal pitch. It was not that, however, which struck dumb the self-conscious Bacon, but it was the fact that the cosmic conscious individual had absorbed, from the time at least, into himself all the forces of the complex organism. As to the compeers of the cosmic sense, they are the spiritual entities spoken of by Balzac, mysterious beings armed with wondrous faculties who combine with other beings and penetrate them as active agents, beings which overpower others with the scepter and the glory of the superior nature. Then in line 9, he is the cosmic conscious Bacon, while the affable familiar ghost is cosmic consciousness. The expression nightly gulls him with intelligence may be compared with Whitman's message from the heavens whispering to me even in sleep. It may be noted here, most readers will observe it for themselves, that when speaking of the same experience, Whitman's language is more moderate, lower toned than Balzac's, Dante's, or perhaps any other of the cosmic conscious writers. Oh, I was continuing the sentence. Okay, another sonnet. How sweet and lovely dost thou make the shame, which like a canker in the fragrant rose doth spot the beauty of thy budding name. Oh, and what sweet dost thou thy sins enclose, that tongue that tells the story of thy days, making lascivious comments on thy sports, cannot dispraise but in a kind of praise, naming thy name blesses and ill reports. Oh, what a mansion have those vices got, which for their habitation chose out thee, where beauty's veiled cloth cover every blot, and all things turn to fair that eyes can see. Take heed, dear heart, of this large privilege. The hardest knife ills doth lose its edge. How sweet and lovely dost thou make the shame. Helen Price says that in 1866, Walt Whitman, who wanted a publisher for Leaves of Grass badly enough at that time, was offered a prominent house good terms on condition that he would consent to the deletion of a few lines of Children of Adam. An hour or two after the offer was made, he returned to her mother's house in New York, where he was then staying, and after telling her and her mother of the offer, said, "But I dare not do it. I dare not leave out or alter what is so genuine, so indispensable, so lofty, so pure." So, as to an earlier episode in his life, he told the writer, when Leaves of Grass in 1855 roused such a tempest of anger and condemnation, I went off to the east end of Long Island and spent the late summer and all the fall, the happiest of my life, around Shelter Island and Peconic Bay. Then came back to New York with the confirmed resolution, from which I never afterwards wavered, to go on with my poetic enterprise in my own way and finish it as well as I could. A corresponding incident in Balzac's life, too, occurred in connection with the publication of Le Médecin de Campagne. In 1833, shortly after his illumination, he wrote to his much-loved sister that the book would reach her next week. "It has cost me," he said, 10 times the work Louis Lambert did. That labor was frightful. I may now die in peace. I have done a great work for my country. 2 months afterwards, he writes again, "Do you know how Le Médecin has been received? By a torrent of insults, that is, but I have chosen my path. Nothing shall discourage me. Never has the torrent which bears me onward been so rapid. No more terribly majestic work has ever been compelled the human brain." Line 4. Oh, and what sweets, etc. refers to the vices, crimes, meanness in the plays, the acts of Regan, Goneril, Edmund, Lego, etc. And does not a veil of beauty cover them all? That tongue, he says, that tells the visions, the revelations which proceed from the cosmic sense, cannot dispraise, but in a kind of praise. In a kind of praise. And I say, says Whitman, that there is in fact, no evil. Then be cautious, the cosmic sense, to take heed of this large privilege. And so we see Whitman returning upon his poems, considering lingering long, and striking out words and expressions that seem to him too free. This sonnet is one of the most difficult to fully enter into the meaning of, but when this is realized, it is perhaps the most exquisite passage ever written by its author, the most exquisite in expression and in metaphysical subtlety. No comment, perhaps certainly no comment by the present editor, can do it even the most meager justice. Another sonnet. Some say thy fault is youth, some wantonness, some say thy grace is youth and gentle sport. Both grace and faults are loved of more and less. Thou makest false graces that do to thee resort. As on the finger of the throne queen, the basest jewel will be well esteemed. So are those errors that are in thee are seen, to truths translated and for true things deemed. How many lambs might the stern wolf betray, if like a lamb he could his looks translate? How many gazers mightst thou lead away, if thou wouldst use the strength of all thy state? But do not so, I love thee in such sort, as thou being mine, mine is thy good report. The plays, the offspring of the cosmic sense, that is, are variously judged. What, for instance, seems wantonness to one another is gentle sport. Both faults and graces are commended, for faults are made graces by the alchemy of the cosmic sense. I am myself, says Whitman, just as much evil as good, and my nation is, and I say there is in fact no evil. And Paul says, I know and I'm persuaded in the Lord Jesus, that is, by the cosmic sense, that nothing is unclean of itself. As a base jewel on the hand of a queen passes for a rich gem, so all things in you, the cosmic sense, are beautiful, true, and good. If you should give free expression to this revelation using the strength of all your state, you would lead many astray, for they would misunderstand you. And you yourself in your progeny, such as Paul's epistles, the Shakespearean dramas, or the leaves of grass, etc., would be condemned and would be so hindered doing your proper work in the work, therefore do not so. And another sonnet. How like a winter hath my absence been from thee, the pleasure of the fleeting year. What freezings have I felt, what dark days seen, what old December's bareness everywhere. And yet this time removed was summer's time, the teeming autumn big with rich increase, bearing the wanton burden of the prime, like widowed tombs after their lord's decease. Yet this abundant issue seemed to me but hope of orphans and unfathered fruit, for summer and his pleasures wait on thee, and thou away the very birds are mute. Or if they sing, 'tis with so dull a cheer, that leaves look pale, dreading the winter's near. So as to the absence of the cosmic sense, or more properly speaking, its only occasional presence in even the greatest cases, see comment on Sonnet 33. Oh, that was up there. As elsewhere pointed out, even self-consciousness, which has perhaps existed in the race for several hundred thousands of years, and now appears in the individual at about age 3 years of age, is liable to lapse. How very far from constant must then a new faculty like cosmic consciousness be? The writer speaks of a time when the cosmic sense was absent, but as he puts it, it was he that was absent from the cosmic sense, that being considered the real person. So Whitman speaks of the cosmic sense as himself, and of the self-conscious Whitman to the other I am. And yet he says it was a period of very free production, as there is no reason it should not have been, for what is revealed by the cosmic sense remains clear and manifest even for months and years, supposing there should be no subsequent illumination. Compare Yeats, as quoted in comment on Sonnet 33, once again. So go back to Sonnet 33 and check out the notes there. But though a period of sufficient or reflected light and of free production, it was joyless and bare as compared with periods during which the cosmic sense was actually present. Okay, another sonnet. O thou my lovely boy, who in thy power dost hold time's fickle glass, his sickle out, who hast by waning grown, and therein showst thy lover's withering, as thy sweet self grossed. If nature, sovereign mistress over whack, as thou goest onward, still will pluck thee back. She keeps thee to this purpose, that her skill may time disgrace and wretched minutes kill. Yet fear her, O thou minion of her pleasure. She may detain, but not still keep, her treasure. Her audit though delayed, answered must be, and her quietness is to render thee. All right. Well, this last sonnet here constitutes the close of the address to cosmic consciousness, or the close of the address to it. It was probably written very shortly before publication, 1609, after the writer had been illumined with the Brahmic splendor. Nearly 20 years, and had produced under its influence nearly the whole Shakespeare drama. O lovely boy, he says, addressing for the last time the cosmic sense, who in the hollow of thy hand both hold time and death, who waning as age advances within me, has grown in the plays thy products, and thereby showest thyself constantly augmenting as thy mortal lovers wither and die. If nature should desire, as her way is, to destroy thee, that is the plays, children of cosmic consciousness, rather, she yet will not, but will keep thee to show that she is able to disgrace time, that is, by making what he cannot kill. Not only so, not only but to also to show that this product of nature can even kill time itself or destroy wretched minutes. Yet do thou, that is nature's favorite, the cosmic sense, the plays, still fear nature, who may keep thee for a time, but perhaps not forever. As to her, nature, though her rule is so strong, she must one day give an account of herself to a stronger power. That power is thee, cosmic consciousness, whom when evolution, which is nature, has produced, that is made general as self-consciousness is today, she, nature, will have received her quietus. For the full apparition of the cosmic sense will destroy death, the fear of death, sin, and space. Then cometh the end when the Christ, or the cosmic consciousness, shall deliver up the kingdom of God, even the Father, when he shall have abolished all rule and all authority and power. For he must reign till he hath put all enemies under his feet. The last enemy that shall be abolished is death. For cosmic consciousness will throw the things of sense, of self-consciousness, or nature, as we know her today, which now absorbs men's thoughts, so into the background as practically to abolish them. Nature, instead of being the Lord as now, will be a slave, will effectually, in fact, receive her quietus. All right, so for the summary, that was a doozy, huh? In the summary, in this case, the ordinary details of proof of illumination are largely wanting. If William Shakespeare wrote the plays and sonnets, we have absolutely no external evidence to build upon. If Francis Bacon wrote them, we have the vague evidence of his seclusion at about the time his illumination, if at all, must have taken place, and Hawley's at his own seeming allusion to the possession by him of such unusual, very exalted faculty. Over and above these circumstances, which to most will seem very slight, the argument that the man who wrote the plays and sonnets had cosmic consciousness must rest upon these writings themselves and would consist of two clauses. One, the creator of the plays was perhaps the greatest intellect the world has seen. His moral intuitions were as true as his intellect was great. He was from all points of view a transcendently great spiritual force. Being so, he ought, according to the thesis maintained in this volume, to have had cosmic consciousness. 2. The first 126 sonnets seems to show beyond doubt that their author had the cosmic sense and that these sonnets were addressed to it. It does not seem to present the writer that they can be made sense of, intelligibly read, that is, from any other standpoint. Thank you.